reality, yeah, all of this suggested that even if it was the case, yeah, that the African heads of states by and large rejected Omowale Malcolm X and their brothers and sisters in the United States of America, it would seem, yeah, that he had significant support, and the brothers and sisters from the United States had significant support, yeah, among the people on the continent. But it is in fact not true, yeah, to say that the African heads of state rejected him and the African governments rejected our brothers and sisters in the United States of America. In this great and illuminating book, yeah, Baba Zak Kondo, yeah, the author of Conspiracies, Unraveling the Assassination of Malcolm X, provides this very useful information. In October, Malcolm's visit to Kenya caused the State Department other worries. 3 developments seem to have worried officials the most. The first was that the KANU backbenchers of the Kenyan parliament passed a resolution expressing, quote, full and unqualified, unquote, support for and, quote, unquote, complete solidarity with Malcolm and the Afro-American freedom fighters. The second was that Malcolm attended at least 2 state affairs as the guest of high-ranking Kenyan officials, including President Jomo Kenyatta and cabinet member Pio Pinto. The third development was State Department fears that emotional and less sophisticated Kenyan leaders would accept Malcolm's twisted account of the American racial and civil rights situation. So, by way of historical context, it's necessary to point out here that there are 3 primary situations that are causing a lot of stir for the American government, yeah, at that time. The first was the assassination of Papa Patrice Lumumba in 1961 and the upheavals that were currently occurring in 1964 in relation to those upheavals, yeah? The American government, this was the time of the Simba Rebellion, all right? Whereby pro-Lumumba forces were engaged in a civil war against the forces of Western imperialism in the Congo. And the American government had intervened, yeah, to back corrupt, yeah, African government aspirants, yeah, in the Congo. Yeah, the second was the British and the West in general support of white minority rule in South Africa in relation to apartheid, and also in what was then called Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And the third was the situation concerning Africans in America and the extent to which Africans in America were linking up with the African diaspora in general and the African continent in particular. Civil rights leaders, yeah, such as Dorothy Height, such as James Farmer, and such as Martin Luther King, yeah, to name but a few, had signed a letter written to President Johnson of America and his administration condemning the US intervention in the Congo and requesting that they remove their troops, yeah, the American troops, and get out, yeah, of the Congo. Meanwhile, Omowale Malcolm X is actively seeking to form an operational alliance, yeah, between Africans in America and on the continent for the purpose of bringing the case of African in America to the United Nations. And he's referring to America as a colonizer and Africans in the United States of America as a colonized nation of people. So now we turn, yeah, to this book by brother Carl Evans, The Judas Factor, The Plot to Kill Malcolm X, which informs us, on December 3rd, that's 1964, the FBI discovered that Malcolm X had had several meetings with Quaison Saki. Ordinarily, this would have been of little or no importance. The Bureau, after all, had observed Malcolm over the last 6 months in the presence of Pio Dagama Pinto of Kenya, Frank Karefa Smart of Sierra Leone, and Abdul Rahman Babu of Tanzania. But given the war in the Congo, the rancorous relationship between the Johnson administration and Nkrumah of Ghana, whom US ambassador labeled another Castro, and the fact that Quaison Saki had been elected President of the United Nations General Assembly on December 1st, things were anything but ordinary. The FBI New York field office sent a memo to Hoover reacquainting him with Malcolm X's 4-year friendship with Quaison Saki and reflecting on possible national security problems their friendship could create. So, Quaison Saki, yes, is an official in the Ghana government under Assajafa Kwame Nkrumah. At this point, the United Nations is getting ready to have a General Assembly in New York, yeah? At the time, in 1964, December 1964, and Quaison Saki is elected the president of the UN General Assembly. He's a friend of Omowale Malcolm X, and he's said during the United Nations conference to have given Omowale Malcolm X an office from which he could conduct meetings with various government officials, heads of state, and activists on the ground. Brother Carl Evans in the Judas Factor goes on to inform us, on December 10th, just 9 days after Quaison Saki was appointed President General of the Assembly, African ambassadors repeatedly compared racism in South Africa to racism in North America, just as Malcolm had requested. The first to make the link was Louis Lansana Bevogui, Guinea's foreign minister. Bevogui argued that Africans need not feel embarrassed about the deaths of whites in the Congo Civil War since, quote, so-called civilized governments, unquote, has failed to express indignation over the thousands of Congolese citizens murdered by the South Africans, the Belgians, and anti-Castro Cuban refugee adventures. Is this because the Congolese citizens had dark skins just like the colored United States citizens murdered in Mississippi? So, it's a hot time in the United States of America. Omowale Malcolm X is on the scene, building the Organization of Afro-American Unity. The UN General Assembly is taking place. You've got officials from all over the world that is in the process of a decolonial revolution at that time. Fidel Castro is in town, Che Guevara is in town, and another man by the name of Abdul Rahman Mohammed Babu, who we mentioned earlier, is also in town. And Abdul Rahman Mohammed Babu from Tanzania, yes, representing the nation of Tanzania, which is then under the premiership of Baba Julius Nyerere, speaks at a number of OAAU meetings, yeah? So Omowale Malcolm X has invited him to speak, yeah, not just at the General Assembly, but to the grassroots activist African community in the United States of America. And the Judas Factor relays some of those meetings like this. In the opening section of the speech, Babu drew a connection between the plight of Africans and African Americans to the delight of the crowd. Quote, "The history of Tanzania," Babu said, "is the history of slavery and a summary of the history of Africa. A country ruled for 2 centuries by feudal sultans supported by imperialist power." At the December 14th rally, Babu told the enthusiastic crowd that the same American policies wreaking havoc and bloodshed in South Vietnam and in the Congo were responsible for racial oppression in America. So again, this brother from Kenya, who's a revolutionary and a government minister, is standing in revolutionary solidarity with his brothers and sisters in the United States of America. So basically, yeah, the thing will pop off, yeah, it's going off, yeah, in America, and these Africans from across the diaspora are looking like, yeah, they're on the verge of achieving some significant operational unity across the diaspora, yeah. As I've said already, yeah, that Omowale Malcolm X was looking, yeah, for these African states, yeah, with the power, yeah, of their unified force at the United Nations to basically push the United Nations to investigate human rights abuses, yeah, against Africans in America. Was that gonna take place? Yeah, was that gonna take place is the final thing I'm gonna address, and the Judas Factor lays it out like this. When Malcolm returned from Africa in May 1964, after his first trip, he claimed that not only had the OAU agreed to act upon his resolution requesting them to interject the Negro problem into the UN debates, but that they intended by the year's end to advance his second proposal by labeling America as much a colonial power as South Africa. It was December 22, yet no mention had been made at the UN of America being a colonist. To the horror and complete surprise of the Johnson administration, the situation suddenly changed, thereby establishing Malcolm X as a leader for Africans as well as African Americans, and to the intelligence community a major threat to national security. A story in the December 22 New York Times describes it best. Quote, "The United States, which until recently were censured by other Western countries for fostering the independence of territories that were presumably not ready for it, is now finding itself criticized as a colonial power. Charges of colonialism, neocolonialism, and imperialism are being levied at the United States in the 24-member United Nations Special Committee on Colonialism. Although United States officials at the United Nations state emphatically that the United States is not a colonial power, the newly independent states of Asia and Africa are passionately intent on freeing all lands that are not entirely self-governing, whether they want independence or not, according to one United States spokesman." So family, I'm basically going to leave it there, yeah? Made the case, all right? Suffice to say, there's far more to the story, yeah, than Omowale Malcolm X being rejected by African heads of states when he went to Africa. And there's even more that I could have put on that, yeah, in terms of Omowale Malcolm X's sojourn in Mama Africa, which is one of the most underappreciated aspects, yeah, of his life and his legacy. I know somebody I wonder, yeah, what did go on from that point until now if they was all on this thing, or so many people was on this thing at that time? And the short answer to that is, you know, the forces of European imperialism galvanized and basically waged an all-out attack on all forms of black nationalist Pan-Africanism and black power throughout the world. So if we understand, yeah, basically that after this point, COINTELPRO was in full force attacking the Black Panther Party, the US organization, the Nation of Islam, and all other formulations, the Black Liberation Army, the Republic of New Africa, yeah, and all formulations of resistance that were taking place in the United States, yeah, to the point whereby we still have political prisoners in jail right now, yeah, free Mumia, yeah, because that's the current issue right about now, free Mutulu Shakur and all political prisoners. If we can understand that that is the case and that's what took place, yeah, in the United States of America, I would just ask you, yeah, to understand, yeah, even if you're not fully aware of the history, yeah, that a similar attack, yeah, was waged on the African continent against all of the revolutionary leaders. We're talking about a number of assassinations. So, for example, Omowale Malcolm X is assassinated months after the events that we're discussing right about now, in February of 1965. The Osagyefo for Kwame Nkrumah is overthrown, yeah, in April, yeah, of 1966, the following year. Yeah, the very following year, he is overthrown, yeah? And so a lot of the revolutionary, Patrice Lumumba is already assassinated. And in fact, prior to the overthrow of Osagyefo for Kwame Nkrumah, there had already, yeah, been at least 11, yeah, coups and assassinations of progressive leaders and governments on the continent of Africa, yeah? And following the overthrow of Osagyefo for Kwame Nkrumah, there were a number more, yeah. So the reality that we have to come to terms with as Pan-Africanists is that we just lost a lot of battles. The might, yeah, the full might, yeah, of European imperialism was waged against us, and we've lost a lot of battles from the 60s until now, but we're still here. And it wasn't just confined to the continent of Africa or the United States of America. In the Caribbean, throughout the Caribbean, this took place also. You know, in the 1970s, people like Walter Rodney were assassinated. Even people like pt2, the revolutionary music icon, was assassinated. All right, and then you know, if you go into the 80s, there's Maurice Bishop and others, kings and queens, and so we just have to bear in mind that is the case. Same thing for the anti-apartheid movement and the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela, the assassination of many leaders, many leaders, bigging up people like Robert Sobukwe and Steve Biko, Mama Namzamo Madikizela, Winnie Mandela, who kept the fight alive despite, you know, various different attacks against her, both physically and in terms of her personality as well. Character assassination was a massive thing, and that is just the reality that we have to deal with. And in fact, when it comes to this issue of Omowale Malcolm X, one of the things that we have to come to terms with and deal with as well is the extent to which this misinformation, the lack of knowledge around what Omowale Malcolm X did in Africa, and the disinformation around what he did in Africa and what the brothers and sisters did alongside him in Africa, is actually a manifestation of the COINTELPRO agenda. And I can prove that to you just by a small snippet from J. Edgar Hoover's official memo to his operatives in terms of what they need to be doing in relation to COINTELPRO. And J. Edgar Hoover said, "The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalists," what he referred to as hate type, organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership and supporters. So a part of the program is to deliberately misdirect, and one of the best ways to misdirect is to promote misinformation and disinformation. And so to the extent, that people believe that Omowale Malcolm X was, generally speaking, roundly rejected by Africans on the continent, is the extent to which that particular COINTELPRO has been achieved, that is being perpetuated in our community. And so for my brothers and sisters who are Pan-Africanists, who are universal African nationalists, who are black power advocates, we just have to understand that that is the part of our challenge today. And we have to rise to that challenge, We can't complain about it. It is what it is. That is our challenge, and we have to rise to it and counter the false narratives, and speak the truth and set the record straight in terms of the liberation efforts of our history. But most importantly, let us do our best, to stand on those shoulders, to build on that work and manifest it in today's world, in a way that does justice to the efforts and the sacrifices of those like Omowale Malcolm X. And with that, I'm going to give the last word, as I gave the first word to Papa Omowale Malcolm X. Let's give him the last word, taken from the autobiography of Malcolm X. "I can only wish that every American black man could have shared my ears, my eyes, and my emotions throughout the round of engagements which had been made for me in Ghana. And my point in saying this is not the reception that I personally received as an individual of whom they had heard, but it was the reception tendered to me as the symbol of the militant American black man, as I had the honor to be regarded." And with that, long live the work and the legacy of Omowale Malcolm X. Tenda mwali, kudzai muzeo mukulu, abibi fahondie, abibi tumi, uhuru, uhuru, uhuru.